Hello people and welcome to the People Building Podcast. Today I'm bringing you my interview with Elena Perella. Now I will say that Elena and I have different ways of probably getting to the same kind of outcome in the work that we do. So she too is a coach. She is using methodologies really that she's carved out for herself and things that she has learned from extensive research in her journey to overcome some of her own issues, which included eating disorders, family trauma, and domestic violence. So you're going to hear about those things in this particular show today. I'm going to mark out for you some of my highlights, and then after the show I will pop back and give you a bit of a summary of the best bits, the things that I found most interesting, helpful, or the bits that I outright disagreed with at the end of my interview with her. So first things first, I would like to say, I do, watching it back, I do see that I'm doing a fair bit of reframing, and the reframing is around how things are phrased. You know that the linguistic part of neuro-linguistic programming is something that I just latch onto. I can't help myself with this. So when Elena says that she was a toxic product of her family, I rephrased it as a product of my toxic family. Sometimes when you change the syntax, you get a very different outcome. There's a really good example Tony Robbins gives actually, where he says, Johnny bit the dog is very different to the dog bit Johnny. It's that kind of a thing. There's some really nice advice in this one, like all round good, solid advice. Get specific about your dreams and notice how they also unfold little by little as you start working your way towards them. Take your chances. A question that I asked quite early on, this is a good question for all of you coaches out there. You may have this one. Tell me about it. Like, tell me more about that thing. That's a really good way to just get more information if you don't feel like you've dived deep enough into the subject and you know that there is more to come. So yeah, here's some bits that I think for me personally didn't quite fit for me. For example, the idea that we can ever be free of all toxic elements in our lives. Now, maybe this comes down to my understanding, my distinction around what we mean when we say a toxic element. For me, that is the challenging stuff that happens in life, the stuff that gives you discomfort, stress, anxiety, etc. I personally feel that we're all a work in progress. And unless you are sitting in a Zen state in a monastery, then maybe you can be completely free of all toxic elements. But if you're out there moving and shaking and interacting in the world, you're always going to rub up against something that creates feelings of, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we need those moments to really give us contrast on the good bits so that we can identify the good bits when they happen, because they don't look as bad as the bad bits do. So Elena talks a lot about the relationships, like family dynamic relationships and the romantic relationships that she went on to have as an adult, and also how some of those adult romantic relationships were playing out in a similar way to the relationships that she had with her mother, her father, her grandparents. And I had a really good quote. This is from someone else's podcast the other day, but I thought it tied in quite nicely here. Some people have a habit of getting in a relationship with someone like their dad, someone like their mum. That is a bad thing to do, because we know that incest is bad. So don't get in a relationship with your mum or your dad or your grandparent, even if it's them showing up in a completely different physical body. Don't get in a relationship with those people. Incest is bad. All right. So yeah, some other disagreeable parts from me. Not all domestic violence comes from men punishing their mothers. Sometimes domestic violence comes from men that have modelled their fathers. Sometimes domestic violence relationships come from women who have modelled their violent mothers or their violent fathers, or who are feeling particularly aggressive towards their fathers and take it out on their husbands. And all of the other potential interrelationship type situations that there are available. You know, there are domestic violence situations between two females in a relationship, between two males in a relationship. It shows up in all manner of relationships, and it's not necessarily always because it's a man acting out against his female partner because of the frustrations that he felt towards his mother. So I would just be mindful of that one going forward as you are listening. I asked Elena quite early on about whether her father's passing changed the rules, because sometimes when you lose a parent, you know, a parent is someone who sets out the rules for you in life. They say, this is how you're going to live your life. This is who you're going to be in the world. And when that parent passes, those rules go with them, unless you hang on to them, which some people do. But very often, those rules go with them. And so it can give you permission to live your life in a different way. And so I was curious about whether that applied in Eleanor's case, because she did change the rules of how she was living as a result of her father passing away. I found it very interesting that she said no, or that she didn't represent it to herself in that way. That's how it looked to me. And finally, final one that I will point out before we jump into it. So Elena makes a nice point about don't mistake love for investment. I don't know if those were her exact words. Those might be my words. But sometimes in a romantic relationship, we might become so invested in the idea of what that can become that it becomes mistaken for love when it was not love. It was just a very big investment that had been made. And it reminded me of a meme that I saw a long time ago that I think applies quite nicely to the circumstances we were talking about at that point. The meme said, don't stick with a mistake just because you spent a long time making it. All right, I'm going to hand over to Gemma from the past and Elena Perella, who is going to tell us all about her life, her relationships, and how she managed to rid herself of the toxic inheritance that she was given by her family. And I will see you all on the other side for a review and a recap of this very interesting podcast. Thank you for joining us today. I am here with Elena Perella. Have I pronounced it properly?
Yes.
Wonderful. That's always good news. Who is going to be telling us about her life experience and where she came from and where that has led her to in her life up until now, with, I'm sure, many wonderful things coming up in the future. So, Elena, thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I see you've got loads of books in the background. Are you a big reader?
Absolutely, yes. I couldn't live without.
That's lovely. So tell me a little bit about where you were when you first got started out in life. Where did you grow up? Where are you from?
I'm from Italy, Sardinia. I grew up here, and at the age of 20, I moved to the Netherlands.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
where I lived for 14 years. And then
what made you leave? Sardinia sounds like such a beautiful place. Why would you go?
because it was on my path, I would say. It was a dream I had to move abroad. I was an older teenager, when I
Yeah.
said to myself, one day I will move abroad, study at university, speak seven languages, and marry a foreigner.
That's amazing. So, did you
And
learn languages in school as well?
well, actually, in school, well, at university when I was in the
Yeah.
Netherlands, and then I am a self learner, so I do a
Okay.
lot of by myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That
yeah.
explains all the books in the background.
Yeah. But I left Sardinia because here there are not so many possibility
Okay.
to achieve your dreams, to make your dreams concrete. And
Okay.
the mentality is also not very progressive. I mean,
Okay.
they
Yeah.
are not very open to innovation.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
What was it that you were dreaming about then that caused you to make the decision to leave? What were you dreaming about in those earlier days?
Well, I felt that I was um, here for something bigger than just doing a regular job, which is not bad. I mean, for those who
Sure.
love it, it's perfect. But there was something more,
Yeah.
and I felt I couldn't find it here.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
understand that.
and it was, yeah. I mean, I am a kind of internationally oriented,
Yeah.
and living here was really like.
Restrictive.
Yes, I was too limited. I
Yeah.
couldn't expand, and
Mhm.
I have this tendency of
Yeah.
expand. Yeah,
Yeah. I can
expand
appreciate that.
myself. Yeah,
It's interesting you say as well about there's nothing wrong with doing, a normal job and living a normal life because I think for people who have an itch to want more, you sometimes
mm,
feel a bit guilty about it. As if, oh, I wish I could just fit in with everybody else and just accept that, this is what life has to offer. But I think if you have that, almost like a sense in your soul that there is a different purpose for you, it's really important that you follow it because otherwise it kind of eats it at the back of your mind.
absolutely. And if you don't do it, you'll end up living an unfulfilling life,
Yeah.
sad, disillusioned. I mean, no, I prefer to take my chances and follow what I was feeling. It
Yeah.
wasn't very clear in the details, but little by little, I uncovered it.
What did your friends and family think about you leaving?
Well, actually, I left in an unexpected way.
Okay.
It was something that I wanted, but my father died when I was 19.
Uh-huh.
And it was then when I opened my eyes, people
Yeah.
call it the awakening, and I began to see things as they really are.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I realized that I was a toxic product of my family
Right. How so? Tell me about that.
because from age 12, I began to manifest unwanted behaviors like I was smoking, for
Okay.
example. I had no self-confidence,
Mm.
which caused other people to target me. I was bullied at school.
Okay.
I developed the binge eating disorder. I felt quite depressed.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't realize it. I wasn't awake yet. When I
Sure.
was 19, my father's death
Yeah.
opened that up for me.
Yeah.
And I saw, oh my goodness, uh, this, this is not me. These are not my choices. Nobody's so stupid to choose to hurt himself.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
sabotage yourself. There is something inside of you that makes you sabotage yourself and your life. I
That's
realized that,
learning for a 19-year-old to go through.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was all of a sudden,
Yes.
all
Yeah.
of a sudden, yeah.
I'm sorry for the loss of your dad, especially when you were still so young as
Mm.
well. Do you feel that his passing maybe in some way kind of changed the rules that you thought that you were supposed to be living by?
No, no, no,
What was it about the
no.
fact that he'd passed that?
Actually, I really don't know it.
Okay.
It wasn't. My father and I had actually we didn't have a good relationship. I was kind of invisible for him. He
Yeah.
was a busy businessman,
Right.
dedicated to his job,
Hmm.
no time for family. So I really didn't know him, although we lived under the same roof,
Wow.
because he never built a relationship with me. He never communicated. I didn't know anything about him when he died, just what he did for a job, and that he had some passions, and that's it. I didn't know about his feelings, emotions, his life, his past, nothing.
Yeah.
So it was just, yeah, his death that's opened this door for me.
Yeah.
And then I realized that I was a toxic product of my family. I inherited also the good things, the
Sure.
positive things, the traits and tendencies, but a lot of toxicity.
Mm.
And I said to myself, I don't want to be like this. I don't want to live a life
Hmm.
like my mother, for example, or like my father. They were never happy,
Right.
because they were repeating what they inherited from their
Of
parents.
course. Of course. All right. So
Yeah.
you had this kind of awakening
Mhm.
experience, and so you left. What did you do after you arrived in the Netherlands?
Yeah. I left because life put on my path a young boy. We fell in love with each other, and he was living in the Netherlands.
Right.
So after a year, he asked me, "Why don't you come here?"
Uh-huh.
And I thought, okay, this is happening for
Okay.
real. I packed in, and it was jumping in the darkness because I didn't
Yeah.
know any language but Italian, a little bit of English and
Wow.
Spanish. And I had never traveled abroad, you know.
Okay.
Uh, so it was very new for me,
Yeah.
but I didn't think about it. I just did it. It was the right choice.
Was it what you expected it to be?
Actually, at the time, nothing. It was just, I let it flow, I let it flow.
Yeah.
And little by little, when I was living in the Netherlands, I discovered my passions, uncovered my passions, what I wanted to do. And I failed many, many times.
Yeah.
And what I did was a deep internal work,
Okay.
because once I opened my eyes at my father's death, I began to identify all inherited toxic elements
Hmm.
that belong to my mother, to my father, even to my grandfather, my grandmother,
Wow.
and that were making me to go through experiences that were very tough,
Yeah.
like the eating disorder. When my father died, for example, the binge eating disorder turned into bulimia nervosa.
Wow.
And so in total, I spent 23 years suffering from eating disorders.
Gosh, that's a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah. And I knew that they belonged to my mother because she has a troubled relationship with food. She
Okay.
passed on to me a lack of love.
Yeah.
I wasn't a wanted child. She didn't want to have children. So she passed all that hatred on
Yeah.
to me, hatred for herself, for life, for me, because I kind of ruined her life.
You were
And
unexpected.
no, yeah, actually, she had to compromise with my father because she lived in a very toxic, violent environment,
Right.
and she had to get out of her parents' house
Mm-hmm.
before it was too late.
Okay.
And she attracted my father, who was also wounded internally, emotionally. And my father wanted to have children.
Mm-hmm.
So if she had said no, she would have risked to break the relationship with him and stay in her parents' house. And she didn't
Okay.
want that. So she compromised, and I was born. Yeah, but not out of love,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's why I got so many problems.
Yeah.
Uh, Not only because they passed on to me their toxic inheritance, but also because they couldn't parent me with love.
Mm-hmm.
And so this fueled the toxic inheritance.
Yeah.
because they never encouraged me. My mother was very obsessive and controlling. My father was completely absent. So there was no love in at home.
Right. And were you an only child? Did you end up with siblings?
I end up with siblings, but we have no relationship anymore. Yeah, yeah. And so when I went to the Netherlands, I identified all those toxic elements that belong to my mother, previous generations, and also the emotional wounds that they caused me.
How quickly did you start identifying those things after you'd moved away?
Well, actually, as soon as I turned 19, that I awoke,
Yeah.
I began to see that.
Yeah.
And then little by little,
It was
yeah,
more uncovering.
yes, the
Yeah.
one after the other, eliminate the one after the other.
Yeah.
And yeah, the more I eliminated, the more
More
I
came along.
exactly. And I thought, oh no, one more. Okay.
Yeah.
And it was a very long process because while I was eliminating those toxic elements,
Yeah.
I was also experiencing what they were forcing me to go through. And
Mm.
so the smoking, the eating disorders,
Sure.
toxic
Your
relationship.
reactions towards them, really.
Well, actually, it was a kind of script that I
Yeah.
was um, manifesting,
Uh-huh.
and I couldn't react in different ways.
Mm.
I couldn't because we don't have that under control.
Yeah.
It's the inheritance that controls us. This is
Mm.
why it is so difficult to change.
Yeah.
People who have addictions, for example, they know how difficult it is
Yeah. Yeah.
to get out of this dimension.
Mhm.
It's not just that you choose to do it. No, you have to do an internal work.
Sure. So that internal work that you started to do, were you doing that independently? Were you seeking help for this? How did you go about it?
I coach myself.
Okay.
Sometimes I did try to look for supports because
Mhm.
it was huge,
Yeah.
but I never found the right match. So, and there was also a reason. Yeah.
So where did you start? What was the very first thing you did? Had one problem, looked at it and went, okay, we need to do something with this. What did you do?
The first one, I think it was when I wanted to get to college, to university. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I failed once
Mhm.
because there was this toxicity. I inherited uh, how can I say this? The fear of failure of my mother. She never made her dreams concrete. So, and I was also very scared to do
Yeah.
it. Also, I inherited the lack of self-confidence that my mother had,
Yeah.
and that it was fueled by
Mm.
the lack of self-confidence that they made me grow up with.
Sure.
And the anxiety, I was very anxious
Yeah.
to take that step. But I thought, no, this is something that I really love.
Mhm.
And so, what do I have to do in order to achieve it? And I thought, I challenge it, and I did it. So, first time I failed, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Let's take a pause.
Yeah.
And a year after, I decided 2 years after, I decided to do it again. And yes, it
Amazing.
worked. Yeah.
When you went through that failure, the fact that you managed that failure so well and you didn't say, oh, well, it just goes to show all of those things I inherited from my family still there. Now I'm a failure as well. So you must have already done a significant portion of the work in your mind to be able to manage that failure and take it as a sign of, no, I just need to have another go next year and do it in a different way.
Actually, it happened very spontaneously. I didn't think that much
Yeah.
about it. Yeah. No, there wasn't a logical thought process. No,
Sure.
I
Yeah.
just passed throughout that fear of failure.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's amazing.
wasn't, yeah, it was a very spontaneous, natural process for me. I wasn't reasoning about that. I
Yeah.
wasn't following any system.
Yep.
I just let it flow. It was very, very difficult because the suffering was quite heavy.
Okay.
But for some reason, I wasn't, I didn't allow those fears
Mm-hmm.
freeze me.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think it was that made you avoid having those fears freeze you? Was it because your desire to achieve was so committed? You were so sure about what you wanted?
There was a kind of, how can I name it, a kind of force, even though
Yeah.
sometimes I had to to take sideways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this, there was this force, and I never tried to stop it. The more I eliminated,
Mm-hmm.
the more toxic elements I eliminated, the more the strength that I had inside arose.
Sure.
You know, it weren't those experiences that made me strong.
Yeah.
On the contrary, it works for everybody like that. I know that many people have the tendency to say what doesn't kill you make you stronger. That's false, and it's a very toxic belief, because it won't kill you today, but it will kill you later because of the consequences that you pay.
Yeah.
You know, the strength that you need is already inside of you.
Yeah.
You know, you just need the love of your parents, and with love I mean energy that fuels your will to
Yeah.
help others, yourself and others, grow without causing harm. So you just need that love to activate that strength and let it grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about how you started to take these different toxic elements and eliminate those. You know, what did you actually have to do to make that happen?
Well, what I said, to go through them,
Yeah.
even though I had fears. For example, when the second time that I went to I applied for college,
Yeah.
I just went through that fear,
Hmm.
and by going through that fear was enough to
Yeah.
eliminate it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And was it the same process for all of those elements with your eating disorder, for example? Was it a similar process?
With the eating disorders, I paid very much attention to um, what the influence of my mother was in my
Okay.
life. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I began to love myself, and because I activated love when I awoke.
Yeah.
That was the force. Yes, it was that, the force that helped me go through everything and win.
Yeah.
And with the eating disorders, yes, I kind of saw in myself those parts of
Hmm.
of my mother that were not healthy.
Yeah.
And even her thoughts, the way she thought, it became mine, and I didn't want that
Hmm.
because it wasn't fruitful.
Yeah.
In that case, I paid attention, and
Yeah.
I said to myself, okay, is this you? Are these your thoughts,
Yeah.
or are these your mother's thoughts?
Mm. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
It's a story that I sometimes share with clients, which one of my trainers told me about how there is a mother and a daughter together. The daughter's a grown up daughter at her house, and the daughter is preparing a roast dinner for the family. And she has a big piece of pork, and she has a dish for the pork to be roasted in. And the mum says to the daughter, make sure you cut the end off of the ham before you cook it. And the daughter says, why do we do that? Why do we always have to cut the end off of the pork before we put it in the oven? And the mum said, well, that's the way that grandma taught me to do it. That's what you have to do. So then they go to the grandma and they say, grandma, you always cut the end off of the pork before you cook it. Why is this? And the grandma says, well, this is what the great grandmother taught me. You know, this is just what you do when you need to roast a piece of pork. So they go to the great grandmother and they say, we're roasting some pork. We cut the end off, but we're not sure why we always have to do this. And the great grandmother says, because it didn't fit in my baking tray. And so
Yeah.
sometimes you just inherit these
Yeah.
ways, that were completely unnecessary for everybody apart from the person that did it in the very, very beginning.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And we never challenge ourselves to change them, even though they feel uncomfortable, they are not useful. We keep going.
Yeah.
Why? Not because we choose to do that, but because we are forced to do that. And we are not aware that we are forced to do that by that inheritance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think there is some comfort as well, perhaps, in sticking with what you know and what's familiar to you, even if it is not fruitful. It's
Mhm.
familiar. And so
Yeah.
sometimes, we can just be a bit too much go with the flow, and we don't pause and really look and ask questions and challenge ourselves, around our own thinking.
Yeah, but that comfort is an illusion
Oh, yeah.
because
It's
we
not really comfortable.
suffer.
No,
Yeah, no,
it's more
it's comfort.
familiarity.
It's familiar.
Familiarity.
It's comfortable, as you said, comfortable. Uh, yeah, but in reality, we are not satisfied, and we accept that, and we call it happiness.
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I think as well, it's not easy for people to self-evaluate. It's always easier to see what somebody else is doing than to see within. Um, and I think that's just humans by their very nature, really. It's easier physiologically for us to look outside than it is for us to look at ourselves. And I also think it happens um, just because of we're so busy. People are in a routine. They have their rota that they follow, and within that schedule there's often not space for self-reflection. That doesn't make it to the to-do list.
Yeah, yeah, it's true what you say, and but then the consequences
Mm,
of not doing that work
yeah,
are huge. I mean, toxic relationships. You marry a woman or a man who resemble in a negative way your parents, and you are
yeah,
not happy.
yeah,
Your children, you raise children
yeah,
who begin to show at one point unwanted behaviors,
hmm,
certain unhappiness, unhealthy habits. Uh, at work,
yes,
you end up in doing work that doesn't really satisfy you, but you
yeah,
conform, and but you will feel miserable your whole life.
yeah,
And well, I mean, when I woke up, I couldn't wait to do that internal work. I
yeah,
couldn't wait to eliminate all those
yeah,
toxic elements. For me, it was a lot of suffering because I was manifesting them, but I was so happy that I could see those
hmm,
elements
yeah,
because, once you see the root cause of a problem, well, it's done. You can easily eliminate it and the
yeah,
problem is solved.
yeah.
Mm.
Do you feel like you're the same person, or do you feel like you have evolved into someone else completely different from who you are?
Well, I have evolved into a new human being. And these are human beings who are free from families and cultural toxic influences
Yeah,
and who are free to choose how to feel, what to think, and how to behave in a sane and healthy way. I
yeah,
have no unhealthy habits.
hmm,
And I'm not afraid of temptation because I don't have any toxic element that pushes me to eat
sure,
unhealthy or smoke or do something that is bad for me.
yeah,
So this is one of the many examples. I was also a victim of domestic violence for 10 and a half years.
wow,
I managed to eliminate the last toxic elements that was making me repeat my family's toxic script in 2018. So
okay,
I am now in the last phase of recovery because I was with a narcissist,
yeah,
psychopath, and sociopath. So the psychological and verbal abuse destroyed all areas of my life. It was horrible. And
mm,
when I broke up with him, actually it was he who left me because I detached from him
Yeah.
from the inside. The first 2 or 3 times I broke up with him, I
Mhm.
always made him come back. Why? Because I wasn't finished
Yeah.
with my
Yeah.
internal work.
Yeah.
The last time it was he who left me out
Yeah.
of my life. He tried to come back. There was no element that he could attach to.
Yeah. Is that because, and I was curious to ask as well, after you had gone to the Netherlands, you were in love with the boy, and then you started changing. I was thinking, I wonder what happened to that relationship, because when you go into a relationship and you go, this is my person, and then they start changing into somebody else, sometimes that's confusing.
Yes, every time it happened, we broke up
Yeah.
because I was this further and the other
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
was left behind. Not
Yes.
because I didn't want him to join me, but the other
Oh,
one was not ready
yeah.
to go with me, together with me.
Yeah.
And so I broke up a few relationships
Yeah. Hmm.
like that, and they were also not very healthy.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And at that moment, at that time, I wasn't aware that also unhealthy relationships were something that I inherited from my parents,
Yeah.
because I was doing the work to eliminate the eating disorders.
Hmm.
And it happened when I came back to Sardinia. It was in 29,
Okay.
2009, sorry, 2009, that I came back to share my life together with the man who was my partner at the time. And we had a project together, but unfortunately, he was an unhealthy person, a narcissist. And he was like my grandfather.
Wow.
Yes. Yep.
How
Exactly the same.
how soon into the relationship did you realize, or do you think you always knew, but there was something in you at that time that was accepting of those circumstances, which then later you rejected?
It was the very first day of our
Wow.
yes, of our relationship, because we were together at his parents' house.
Hmm.
We were they were family friends, and so I was visiting them.
Yeah.
And actually, it started 4 years before
Okay.
we get involved with each other,
Yeah.
because we met. I was there, and I felt a kind of strong bondage with him.
Mhm.
And when I went back, I was living in the Netherlands at the time, and I spent 4 years obsessing myself in my mind with him, thoughts about him. I saw a life, an entire life with him,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
But we were not together. But it was so strong, such a strong attraction,
Yeah.
that was already not so normal,
No.
you know, because love feels different.
Yeah. Do you think that when you were fantasizing, if I can use that word in that way, that it was more of what you would have wanted ideally, rather than a reflection of who you knew he really was and how things would really be between you?
There was something inside of me that wanted that so badly.
Yeah.
And there were two different parts. One was the family toxic script, and the
Mhm.
other one was love.
The love that you were craving alongside the image that you maybe had of how things could be became blurred together.
But you know, love, you don't crave for love. This wasn't healthy. There
Yeah.
was pure love. There was the energy inside of me that
Yeah.
wanted to create something new with
Mm.
him,
Yeah.
and to help him also evolve.
Okay.
But there was also the toxic inheritance, my grandmother's story.
Yeah.
So she was married with a narcissist, psychopath, and sociopath,
Right.
that was pushing me towards him.
Yeah.
And there was also the victimhood of my grandmother
Yeah.
and my mother,
Mm.
because my mother was also a victim.
Yeah.
My father wasn't visibly violent, but he rejected me emotionally.
Hmm.
He abandoned me emotionally. So that's psychological and emotional violence.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talk there as well about with your partner wanting to help him to evolve. Are you someone who is a uh, will you want to save people, help people, even if that's not their journey at that point in time? Or some people have that tendency. I'm that person. I say this because I'm that person. I can be like, I can see how you need to improve. Let me do that with you. And they're kind of, didn't want this for myself.
I can imagine. I was that way.
Yeah.
I was like that, and it wasn't healthy.
No.
It wasn't healthy. And what there was inside of me that pushed me towards him was also the pain of my emotional wounds.
Mm-hmm.
I had a void inside, the void caused by the lack of love
Yeah.
from my parents.
Mm.
And so the need for love, but it was a toxic need, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And that love was also, that lack of love, the toxic need was also pushing me
Mm.
towards him. It was like I was saying, the little child saying, please
Mm.
love me,
Yeah.
look at me, see me.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so we got involved for a year
Mm.
after. But the very first day I felt something inside of me on my stomach. It was as if a hand was writing, he's not for you.
Mm-hmm.
I could almost literally see those words and I froze. We were in the car together and I thought, oh my goodness, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't follow my intuition because there was the toxicity that pushed me to have to be in that relationship.
Yeah.
And it was during those 10.5 years that I did the internal work to eliminate victimhood,
Mm-hmm.
to eliminate also the tendency to attract narcissists,
Yeah.
uh, to fill in that void inside,
Yeah.
giving myself more love
Mm-hmm.
than I had given me until that moment. I had to forgive my grandparents.
Mm.
I had to have a chat with my dead father, you
Wow.
know, because it was thanks to him
Mm-hmm.
that I got involved with this person
Yeah.
and that I never had a healthy relationship with men
Mm-hmm.
because he abandoned me when I was a child. I mean, he was living with us, but wasn't there for me.
Yeah.
So it's obvious that you attract men that don't see you.
Yeah.
It's normal, unfortunately.
Were there other people that you were close to in your life throughout this period of time when you were with your partner, then partner, maybe friends or other people that would be able to tell you this is not a good relationship?
I didn't need people to tell me that. I knew it. Yeah.
Okay.
I knew it from the very beginning. Okay, I couldn't follow my intuition, but it was enough
Yeah.
to make me aware of the toxicity that I had inherited and that I was manifesting
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
that relationship.
It's
So
also a great deal of effort, I've found, to override your intuition. You have to, it's like trying to shut up a child. You're kind of like, no, be quiet. and the intuition is then going, I think I need to tell you something, it's really important. You go, shh. So it takes up a lot of energy, and in some ways a lot of internal strength to silence that dialogue that's trying to make its way through to say something is not okay. So you must have been expending a lot of energy.
absolutely, yeah, you have to be awake for first, that's for sure.
Yeah.
and you have to know what you inherited. You have to
Yes.
identify all those elements. You have to know that your intuition is um, uh, can't that you can't follow your intuition fully because those toxic elements. So there is a lot going on
Yes.
inside of you. Yeah, and you have to be very aware of everything so that I could really understand what was the toxicity and what was my intuition. But many people say, yeah, but I followed my intuition and I ended up in this problem,
Mhm.
or it didn't work out.
Yeah.
Wait, was it really your intuition or was
Yeah.
it toxic element?
Yes, yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess with those toxic elements, they bring up needs that you want met, even if it's in unhelpful and unhealthy ways. You know, your system, your psyche is just going, no, but I need this. I need this. And so it's easy to mistaken that for, oh, well, I'm being driven towards it. I feel compelled to do this. It must be my intuition.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it is so because I did it alone, it was quite tiring.
Yeah.
No, it was very, very tiring. And after that, my goodness, it was a kind of yeah. I felt as if I had been at war,
Yeah.
and it was like that because I had to fight. I had to stay alert 24 hours a day
Hmm.
because my ex-partner would attack me. Well, we were living together
Okay.
for a period, not.
Yeah.
I mean, but it was always with me because I had that toxic inheritance inside. And he was also very threatening,
Hmm.
very violent verbally. I was tortured
Yeah.
psychologically, continuously. And even at night, I had to sleep with an eye open and with
Mm.
an ear, you
Yeah.
know. It was terrifying. It was terror, pure terror.
Did he know about the internal work that you were doing whilst you were in the relationship with him?
Yes, he knew it. And he also knew about him because I made him, well, not aware, but I told him that what he was doing
Hmm.
was because of his toxic inheritance. His
Sure.
mother taught him how to hate
Hmm.
her, himself, and women.
Wow.
And this is the how violence against women originates.
Yeah.
Huh? Mothers who don't love themselves
Hmm.
teaches their children to not love themselves, to hate their mothers, and so to hate women because my ex-partner in every woman sees his mother,
Hmm.
and he hurts women to punish his mother.
Hmm.
This is how domestic violence works,
Yeah.
you know? And this is also where the solution is in women,
Yeah.
not in men, in
Yeah.
women.
Yeah.
And I made him uh, familiar with all these things and also with what he had.
Hmm.
And he realized that at one point. And it was the last year that he said to me, I know that I hurt you, but I can't help it. It is stronger than I am,
Yeah.
you know?
That's a shame. Do you have any contact with him now? Do you know what happened with him?
No. Well, he went again to live with his parents
Okay.
in his miserable life because, you know, once you become a narcissist, there is no way back.
Mm.
You have a personality problem
Yeah. Yeah.
that you cannot fix
Yeah.
anymore. And he lives in terror because narcissists live in terror,
Hmm.
but they do as if they are kind of the most courageous men in the world, and
Yeah.
women, because there are lots of
Of
women
course.
who are narcissists.
Yeah. There's a big front
Oh yeah, yeah,
presentation, but behind the
yeah.
scenes, a lot of
Behind the scene
panic.
is pure terror,
Yeah.
pure terror, and I experienced it
Yeah.
all from him because I took him away from his comfort zone. He said, "Oh yeah, it was amazing for him what I proposed to him.
Mm-hmm.
I want to dream with you," he said. "Make of me the man that you see in me."
There's a lot of responsibility for you.
Exactly. And yeah, I didn't know that he wasn't going to collaborate,
No.
So
It was going to be a one-woman project.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it was, I also really loved him because I invested all of my energy
Yeah.
in him,
Uh-huh.
trying to wake him up, to
Yeah.
make him aware, to wow, it was one direction,
Mhm.
a one direction situation. And I gave it up when I tried everything.
Mhm.
And I did also the last step of my internal work.
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, that's it. Yeah.
So, in terms of reaching the point of ending that relationship, was it more like uh, you reached a point where you had exhausted all your options, or was it more as if there was one event, one thing that made you go, and that's enough?
It wasn't an event. It wasn't the exhaustion of my resources.
Mhm.
It was that I eliminated the last toxic element that I inherited
Yeah, so
from
it
my
was
grandparents and
from your
parents.
own
Yeah.
work, your internal
Yeah.
work that got you there.
Yes. Yeah. And so there was no need, toxic need
Mm.
anymore to be seen, to be loved,
Yeah,
to be considered. There was no victimhood anymore. Nothing,
yeah,
nothing. And I could see myself clearly,
yes,
strong, very, very strong, but wounded
yeah,
because of the domestic violence, healed from what I went through when I was a child because of my parents, but with a lot of reconstruction to do.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And yeah, it was really the last toxic element made it for me.
yeah,
The, I even felt that it was enough, it was just, it faded away.
yeah, yeah,
Everything faded away. This is why it couldn't come back, because I was free. I was clean from the inside. And yeah, uh, the only thing that remained was sadness, because I mean, it doesn't have to go this way in our lives.
yeah.
It's a lot of suffering that is unnecessary,
Mhm.
for nothing. The
Yeah,
strength that we uncover that strength is already inside of us when we are born.
yeah,
We don't need toxic hardships. I call them toxic because they are unnecessary.
yeah,
If it's a situational hardship, perfect. You can learn something from it. If
sure.
it's toxic, it's a waste of time. It
Yeah,
weakens you, it poisons you. You put your life at risk
yeah, yeah,
because of that, like it happened to me.
yeah. I'm curious about you speak of letting go of the victimhood, and I think that that's a really big deal.
Mm.
I think that's a big challenge for not just victims of domestic violence, but in lots of different traumatic events, letting go of the identity of being a victim. Um, People find really challenging. Um, and it's just such a liberating thing to do because it really holds you back if you keep it. And it's very disempowering to keep it. How did you detach yourself from that status of victim?
The first thing was realizing that it was inherited.
Mm-hmm.
So when I realized that, I thought, okay, I don't have to identify with that identity
Yeah,
of victimhood. My mother was a victim, my grandmother, they inherited. Okay, now that I am aware,
mm,
the thing that I have to do is to eliminate those toxic elements that push me to be in such a relationship,
mm,
being as a victim, and it will fade away. I
yeah,
don't feel a victim anymore.
Mhm.
So I broke the chain.
Yeah.
Clear. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that you are quite unique in that you have almost taken yourself through the cognitive processes of, you know, let me have a chat with myself. Let's look at this. Well, that's old. We don't need it. Let that go. I think that's really remarkable. And I wish more people found it as straightforward as this.
I wish the two actually,
Yeah,
yes, that the world would be better, a better place
yeah,
to live in
yeah,
overnight. Yeah.
what do you think it is? Because I'm guessing you've probably had situations since where, you know, people have been in a similar situation to the ones that you were in, and you said, well, this is how I did it. And then they maybe say, yeah, but for me, there's this, and I can't because blah, blah, blah. Do you find that quite frustrating?
Uh, Frustrating, actually. No, I mean, do you want to stay in that position? Be my guest.
Yeah,
Be my guest. I'm sorry for you and for your children and grandchildren.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
If you have a little bit of love for yourself and your children, you stop complaining, or you complain,
yeah,
but at the same time, you take action.
sure. Which
Okay.
is
I
fair.
complained. I complained a lot. I admit it, but I was aware and I
Yeah, you
took
do something
action, you
about it.
know? Yeah, I complained, I blamed, I hated. I mean, it was, everything you can
Yeah,
imagine that a human being can think and do.
sure.
But I was aware and I thought, okay, I can complain, but now that I am awake and aware, I
Mhm.
can choose
Yes.
freely. I
Yeah.
can choose freely. Before I couldn't. Before I couldn't.
Yeah.
And I understand people who continue to repeat these toxic cycles.
Hmm.
I understand them because if you're not aware,
Yeah.
you have no choice.
Yeah.
The toxicity chooses for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've spoken a lot about love being a good antidote to these things. How did you learn to love yourself? How does someone who hasn't loved themselves begin to love themselves?
Actually, it happens with a kind of activation. At the moment that you awake,
Mm-hmm.
you already activate love. Because if you awake, then you go through the process of becoming aware of toxic inheritance and eliminate it.
Yeah.
And so the more you eliminate, the more love you unfold
There is more
inside
space.
of you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's indeed, you make more space for it to grow and to eventually to become your source,
Mm.
your internal source of
Ours.
energy, intuition, everything. It's the power. This is the real power.
Yeah.
This is the real love. We
Mhm.
are bombarded with thousands of definitions of love. Put them aside. Begin to understand love as an energy
Mhm.
that is already inside yourself,
Yeah.
that fuels your will to help yourself grow, to help others grow
Yeah.
without causing harm.
Yeah.
This is love. The, this is the starting point.
Mm.
You become aware, no, you awake and you activate love.
Yeah.
And then you become aware and then you do the work
Yeah.
for yourself and then others. Because if you have children, the more you eliminate, the more you become aware, the more you evolve,
Yes. Yes.
the more they change for the better.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. In a way, your dad passing away did give you that awakening. It gave you some kind of opportunity to change your life. What happens for people if they don't have that kind of trigger, that kind of catalyst? How does someone wake themselves up? And do you think if that had have not happened, if your dad was still here, would things have carried on? Or do you think eventually you would have gone, hang on a minute, something has to change?
I think I wouldn't be here.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because going through all this
Mm-hmm.
without, no, it was too much, too
Yeah.
much. Yeah, for me at least. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So how can someone who is in the position that you were in when you were 19 create an awakening for themselves? Is that possible?
It's a very difficult question. I am still figuring out because I have been listening to many people who went through the awakening, and all
Yeah.
of them went through the awakening because of a tragic event.
Yeah. Yeah. Some trigger. Yeah.
So I thought there must be something that we can do
Yes.
in order to avoid
Yeah.
going through a tragic event. And I'm I'm not sure yet. I think sometimes I say try and reflect on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Self-reflection could help.
Yeah.
I don't guarantee that.
Mm-hmm.
It could help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting concept because I've been thinking recently about the people I know who have had very adverse experiences in their life, very difficult experiences, are generally, assuming they came through the other side and they did the work to resolve the trauma, um, are functioning in a more efficient way in their lives, are just more insightful. And it sounds a lot like your definition of being awake. And I also know people who have had really no big traumas in their life, and everything is just okay, you know, and they're
That's
coasting.
that is a trauma in itself,
Yeah.
you know. It's just
and
everything is
it's not,
okay.
I think maybe me from 10, 20 years ago would have said, no, I'd like that. Just kind of coast along and everything's okay. That would have been so nice. But it feels like uh, a big loss at the time to go through a trauma or a big difficulty. But it does give you some kind of light at the end of the tunnel that you wouldn't otherwise see.
Okay, lots of things here.
Yeah,
I
sorry.
wanted to say, no, no, it's good, it's good. I love it. Another thing that could help you, I'm not sure, becoming awake, it could be question everything.
Mm,
But again, you have to be ready to question everything from
yeah,
family to religion to politics, everything that we have been taught until
yeah.
now. Question everything because we are believing in things that are really absurd.
Yes, yes.
We think they are logical, they are
Yeah.
not. And they are one of the biggest causes of most of our problems
Hmm.
because they fuel our family's toxic emotional inheritance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
have the courage to question everything, even
Yeah.
if it's something that you have believed your entire life.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay,
So
this
in a way, be conscious of your biases, because you may have bias to think or live a certain kind of way because of programming, not because
exactly.
it's the right thing.
Yeah, we are domesticated.
Yes.
Okay, so we don't behave in ways we think they are spontaneous, but no,
Yeah.
we think that we make our choices because, yeah, it's a personal choice.
Yes.
No,
No, no, it
think
happened.
that's
The choice was made before you knew about it.
exactly. So question everything. Search on Google. There are no excuses today. We have the internet. You
Exactly.
can use it in a unhealthy way or in a healthy way. So
Yeah.
be curious. Be
Yes.
curious.
Yeah.
And what was the other question?
I don't know now.
Oh my, sorry.
That's
Um,
okay. No,
oh,
that's
it was about the life. Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, yeah. I've known many people who went through toxic hardships,
Mhm.
overcame them, but they didn't really evolve.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, and there is a large group of these people.
Okay.
Yeah, they have kind of substitute, they have overcome those problems,
Yeah.
but internally they are still intoxicated and wounded.
Mm.
They have replaced, they have took something from the outside that gives, it's a kind of, how do you say in English, a bumper, or no, a bumper is something else.
Always on the
A
car.
buffet, yeah. A
Buffer,
buffet. A
buffer.
buffet. Yes, well, the other one is also soft,
Yeah.
but I mean, a buffet, and they, so that they cannot listen to
Mm.
what they haven't eliminated,
Mm-hmm.
and they are kind of uh, now living in a tunnel,
Yeah.
uh, brainwashed by
Yeah.
what they have absorbed and adopted, because they believe that that was salvation.
Yeah.
So there are many, many, but really many people like this.
Mm.
So, okay, you have overcome those toxic hardships, but then what? You're still
Yes.
where you were,
Yeah.
you haven't evolved, and
Mm.
you will pass it on because you have repressed it. The fact that
Yes.
you repress
Yeah.
something toxic, your toxic past, doesn't mean that you're free.
Sure.
It means that it's still there. It will continue to affect you,
Yeah.
your health, your experiences, your behavior, and you will pass it on to your children and they will manifest it as well.
It's almost like their beliefs didn't change. You know,
Yeah,
they still hold the same beliefs as
yeah,
before.
yeah. They do the work on the surface.
Yeah.
It's like stopping with smoking and getting addicted to sweets.
Yeah. Or nicotine patches.
Yeah, it doesn't feel so bad,
Yeah.
sweets. It's yeah, but the root cause is inside of you.
Sure.
So, but they claim
Yeah.
uh, a
Uh,
victory, they claim a great success. Mm, I'm not sure about that. And there
no.
are those people, yes, that they live this life of comfort.
Mm-hmm.
They do not challenge themselves. They think, okay, I have my job, my house, my family, everything is all right.
Mm-hmm.
But you are not growing.
Yeah.
You're not growing and evolving. There is something to that is, yeah, inside yourself that is preventing you from doing that, from stepping further in your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. But would they know? Would they know that they are still stuck in some way?
Many people don't
Mm.
know. There are others who do know it, but as soon as you touch,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, they get scared and they don't know
Yeah.
and they refuse that. But this is very dangerous.
Mm.
Both cases are very dangerous because it's not only about you, it's about all society. The
Yes.
more people find
Around.
themselves in such an internal situation, the worse is for everybody,
Yeah.
because the mass determines the quality of the
Sure.
community.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
of the life of the community, of how we coexist.
Of course. So, on that note, for you, the people that you have around you now, I'm guessing you are perhaps quite fussy, selective about who is sharing your time and energy with you. Um, is that something, do you find it easy to make sure that those relationships in the community around you, you know, the community of people you have around you, are on a similar train of thought?
Where I live, there is nobody, unfortunately.
This is
So,
how you fix the problem.
meaning that the village where I live, I mean, no, that
Uh-huh.
you can't have such a conversation.
Okay.
It's unfortunately.
Hmm.
So my community is behind the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
We attract each other. but
Yeah.
I still find it difficult to encounter people who are where I am.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can appreciate that for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, that's difficult. I think that sometimes a situation like yours where you have had that awakening is a great privilege because not many people have achieved it. And it's a huge accomplishment and testament to yourself, and your sense of self. And at the same time, it must be quite isolating if there are not many others close to you who understand that.
Isolating. For a period, I think I suffered because of that.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I the more I evolved, the more I live with the feeling I am enough.
Okay.
So I really don't need others to feel good, to feel happy, to feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoy my company very much. Really.
We know this from all the books.
And I love interact with people who can understand at a certain level
Sure.
um, what I share with them. And I would love to help more people
Mm-hmm.
reach this level
Yes.
where I am now. It's
Yeah.
not only for me, it's
Mm-hmm.
for you all. There
Yeah.
are many others who are waiting for this,
Mm-hmm.
who are ready for
Yeah.
this. And once you are ready, take the right actions. I
Yes.
mean, and you know, at one point you evolve so further that not only you are enough, but you elevate yourself and you can
Mm-hmm.
see everything. It's not that I think that I am superior.
Sure.
No, you elevate yourself and you can see everything with such a clarity. And you
Mm-hmm.
understand, oh, this is why we as humanity have behaved until now like we have done.
Yeah.
Oh, this is why certain things happen worldwide in
Yeah.
my life. You understand almost everything. And what you don't understand, you will, because you have such a curiosity that
Yeah.
you want to find it out.
Yes. Yeah. And then you can start to see the patterns because there's always patterns,
Exactly,
right?
exactly, exactly. And when everything has become clear,
Yeah.
well, you have the power inside of you. You can do everything
Yeah.
with yourself, with your life. You can achieve your dreams. You can, well, it is a different, it is actually as it should be for
Mm.
every one of us.
Yeah.
This is how it should be, not the other.
Sure.
We are living lives that don't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Really, what we go through doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Parents who mistreat their children doesn't make any sense. We who get addicted to alcohol,
Yeah.
drugs, smoking, whatever, doesn't make any sense. We don't have to hurt each other. It
Yeah.
doesn't
Or
make any
ourselves.
sense. Ourselves, each other. No,
Yeah.
no, no.
I'm curious, would you be in another relationship?
I sometimes I do think of it. I am not ready because I am the last phase of recovering of the 10.5 years of war against my toxic, my family's toxic emotion, my ex-partner. So, but it would be one of the things I will think about
Yeah.
once I finish my this period of recovering and rebuilding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What will be the things that you will look out for in finding someone new? What do you want to see? What do you want to avoid seeing?
The relationship with the mother.
Right.
This is the first thing.
Okay. So
How
it will
was
be
your
date
relationship with
number
your
one,
mother?
and you say, "Can we go and meet your mum now?"
No, it would be different because now that I'm clean from the inside,
Mhm.
that cloud is faded, has faded away. I will feel, first of all, I won't attract easily
Mm.
narcissists. Second, if I do attract them because it happened, it's not because I still have something to do inside of me, but because of love. Narcissists love, love,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's that the energy that keeps them alive. You know?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
once you are clean from the inside, you might attract such a person, but you also know who he is,
Yeah.
and you will easily reject him.
Yes.
So
Yeah. I guess that's the key thing, is that we can all fall into the trap, if you like. We can, a narcissist is designed, they're made for being able to bring you in, and it seems wonderful. But when you're in and you're there, if you have that confidence, self-respect, you think good things about yourself, and then it starts to seem this is not okay for some reason, actually you're okay with saying, sorry, this is not for me. You don't still have that dependency to keep craving that love, even though they are now showing their true colors and are not as pleasant as you thought they were.
yeah. You recognize, it's as if you can read through them,
Yeah.
you know. But the remedy for it is love yourself.
Mm.
Period. You don't need anything more.
Yeah.
Just activate the energy of love, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Of course, eliminate all those toxic elements that
Sure.
cloud it. But once you love yourself, it will be much easier,
Yeah.
really.
So, in terms of this experience that you've been through, is this now, are you building your life around this experience? Is this now your work? You talked about sharing this with other people and wanting to help other people reach this same level. How are you doing that?
Yes, I found my mission in life,
Mm-hmm.
which is I am a personal coach. I decided to translate it into personal coaching for high achievers.
Yeah.
Why? Because I am a
Yeah.
high achiever, and high achievers don't need motivation. I don't motivate people.
Yeah.
And I help them evolve into new human beings.
Mhm.
I help them find a stay in the flow at work and in life and perform at their personal and professional best,
Mhm.
helping them evolving into new human beings,
Yeah.
free to choose how to feel, what to think, how to behave in a sane and a healthy way. And I do this also because I believe that we can do better than the previous generation.
Mm. Yeah.
And we can together, we can leave a healthy legacy.
Yeah. Lovely. What do people, if they were doing a Google search and they were looking for someone like you, what kind of thing are they searching for? That they're maybe not saying, I need to be a new human being. I want to
Of
evolve.
course, yes.
What are they asking for when they first come to you?
Once you begin to work with me, I give you the key to most of your problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's simple. You don't need more than what I give you to free yourself from anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
un- unhealthy behaviors,
Yeah.
problems with your children,
Mm-hmm.
addictions. The only thing that I don't do is treating psychiatric disorders,
Sure.
because it's not my
Yeah.
path, you know. Relationships problems,
Yeah. Yeah.
about leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a lack of self-confidence? Can't you communicate properly with your employees?
Mm-hmm.
Can't you read your employees?
Yeah.
Do you have, are you frequently aggressive,
Mm.
for example?
Yeah.
I mean, you name it. And there is. I mean, once a person said to me, "You are not credible if you say that you can solve most of the problems." You know, it is that it's inside of us.
Yeah.
Our the root cause of most of our problems is our family's toxic emotional inheritance, period. Eliminate that. You eliminate all of your problems, you know, because family makes people. We are made in family.
Yeah.
80% comes from your family. Eliminate that part that is toxic and old and that doesn't serve you anymore. You solve all of your problems.
Yeah.
Simple. I need that we really think also about this. Because there is the general tendency to think that something like this is impossible. It is impossible if you think that it's impossible. What if we are made believe
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
that it's impossible? And the truth is that there is one solution to most of your problems. I mean, I experienced that in my life.
So if people wanted to reach out to you and find out a little bit more about your work, what's the best way for them to be able to do that?
They can contact me on LinkedIn.
Uh-huh.
I have also a website, sentido.com. This is SENTIDU, Sentido.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll
And I
include a link to
am,
that in our description. So
yeah, yeah, I'm on Facebook. I am working at a YouTube channel. I mean, I'm on Instagram there as well. Yeah.
yeah. And so I'm guessing, you know, your work is mainly like this on Zoom. Do you work with one-to-one? Is it group stuff? How do you do the sessions that you deliver?
I am creating programs, new programs, because I am relaunching everything.
Yeah.
For now, it's remote, one-on-one through Zoom or Google Meet. And there will be another program later between the end of this year and the new year, and a webinar.
It was lovely to speak to you today, Eleanor. Oh, well, I wish you all the best in continuing to grow your business and how you're helping other people, but also, you know, your journey in freeing yourself and becoming more of who you want to be in the future. I'm sure there's even more good things to come from you.
Yes, there are.
I look forward to hearing about it. Okay, welcome back. What did you think? So, yeah, there was for me definitely some things in here that didn't sit quite right with me personally, but I can see how the model that Eleanor was sharing with us would definitely be right for some people. There was some language that I was not fully comfortable with. For example, even though it may be true for probably quite a few people, that you were an unwanted pregnancy. Okay, so when your mother became pregnant with you, for some people, it will be true that you were an unwanted pregnancy. I reframe that with Eleanor to unexpected, because I think that it's better for your own psyche and your own sense of self and your own self-worth to tell yourself a different story when the story is something like being unwanted. It's much better to be an unexpected baby than it is to be an unwanted one. So yeah, there was a few points throughout where I really wanted to jump in and go, oh, is that the best way of talking about this? As I said at the very beginning, that's the sort of linguistic part of my brain, wondering how do these words make me feel? And I don't like it, so I want to reframe it. For example, toxic inheritance, forcing me to go through the script, and me saying, and that led to you making some poor choices, and Eleanor saying there was no choice. For me, that feels like a cause and effect violation, which is something we would say in NLP, where it's happening to you. Everything bad has happened to you. Now, that can be true when you are a child. You know, bad things happen to you. But later in life, you do have choices about how you think and react to your circumstances, how you choose to think about those circumstances. I think what Eleanor's a good example of is that it is possible to succeed even if you are carrying a great deal of negativity and a knowledge that your past has been a huge negative effect on your life. When we are carrying blame, it is still possible to succeed. It is, in my opinion, harder to do. There's a lot of language like suffering, difficult, heavy, and all of those, I'm sure, were very accurate words for the experience that she had. And I think that, again, there can be some power and some alleviation. Is that a word? It can alleviate the feelings of what happened in the past to represent those with lighter language, especially when you're thinking about the fact that you've moved on from that now. Some really good points from this conversation: go through the fear, love yourself, identify the parts of you that are not yours, the thoughts that are not yours. I think that's so powerful. Challenge the things that might feel uncomfortable to challenge, because the comfort is an illusion for happiness. Super powerful. What are the consequences of holding yourself accountable to a better standard in your own life? You know, what does that lead you to versus what happens if you carry on as you are? Eleanor said, once you see the root of the problem, it is resolved. I disagree with that. I know lots of people who know exactly what the root of their problem is, and they are still not doing anything about it. Now, maybe that's a motivation issue, and Eleanor was very clear. She's only working with the most motivated people. So for them, when they see the root, it is probably resolved already because they're motivated to do something about it. There is a lot of unmotivated people out there, or people that are just stuck. You know, they know what the problem is, but they just don't know where to start with it. So I don't think that always knowing the root of the problem causes the problem to be resolved. I'm also conscious that there were times in this podcast where there were labels used for personality disorders, psychiatric disorders, and I do not know for certain that those labels were being used in a validated and fair way. For example, the word narcissist is used a lot these days, a lot. Now, people can have narcissistic traits, but narcissism is a part of a personality disorder. So it's not something you should really label people as being, unless you know diagnostically they are a narcissist. But you can say that people have narcissistic traits. You can also say that people may have traits of psychopathy, but can you call them a psychopath? I mean, that's a fairly big jump. And so I think it's appropriate to mention that we want to be careful about throwing those sorts of labels around unless you know that that person actually does have a diagnosed psychiatric or personality disorder, because otherwise it really reduces the potency of what it means for those people who are genuinely suffering with those afflictions. And that's kind of unfair. Secondly, I would say that otherwise it's just subjective. You know, someone can be a complete and utter arsehole, but it doesn't necessarily make them a narcissist. So just call them an arsehole instead. Love versus neediness. Yeah, so there was a lot of conversation around love. And I think it's appropriate to need love. I think we all need love. I think we all do need connection. We are human beings, so what do you expect? But yeah, there is a difference between neediness and needing love. They're different things. Be awake. Know your history. Your intuition may be wrong if you have toxicity. I think these are all very useful things for us to remember. And was there anything else? Yes, there was. I think for me, in this model that Eleanor is using, one of the things that I personally found challenging is the idea that there are these toxic elements that existed that were overcome, I guess is the right word. Here's what I find challenging with that. It sounds a bit like a nominalization. It sounds like it's a physical thing. Like I had a wart and I had the wart removed. So I feel like toxic elements for me in my world are more like processes. They are ways in which I am behaving. They are things that I am doing. They are not things that have grown on me or in me. I haven't been physically given them by anybody. It's a reaction. And for me, that gives me a sense of more power and authority in the moment, because I then have the choice to do something different. I'm not just stuck with this wart on my face that I didn't want there in the first place. Similarly, I am not sure about the word inheritance. I don't know why that felt funny for me, but it did. For me, if it's toxic inheritance is like a house you inherited, so you can get rid of it if you want to, that's okay. But I think that when I hear the word inheritance, it makes me think, especially saying it's, toxic inheritance from your family, makes me think that it's like a genetic inheritance. Again, like it's a thing that you don't have much control or authority over. And how easy is it going to be for you to change your genetics? It just makes it, for me, feel less easy to get rid of. So I think that Eleanor's model of overcoming these traumas will be appropriate for some people, but obviously, listen, no intervention, no methodology, CBT, psychotherapy, art therapy, whatever else there is, none of it is a one-size-fits-all. So that's completely okay. It was an interesting conversation for me because there were quite a few things where I kind of went, I don't know how I feel about that. I was also unsure about the idea that you don't need toxic events to occur in your life. Listen, it would be lovely if that were the case, but would you be a resilient person? Because I think when it comes to resilience, and I talk a lot about resilience comes from challenge, difficulty, bad stuff, bad experiences, not always negative, but definitely challenging. So maybe you don't need toxic events, but I think they can grow you in a way which is difficult to achieve without them. I think they have value. I honestly think they do. Tragedy isn't the only route to changing awakenedness. Yeah, so that's interesting as well, because we're talking there about you don't need toxic events. And I'm saying, well, maybe you do if you want to be resilient. And then Eleanor's saying tragedy is the only route to awakenedness. And when I challenged her on that and was like, there has to be another way, we came up with question everything, check your programming, wake yourself up in that way by being curious and to some extent a little bit suspicious about the world around you. So I think that that's very good advice. I would definitely recommend people are asking more questions and not just, going through life unconscious like most of us do. But I also think that it was interesting that there wasn't an immediate alternative to how you become awakened without having to go through a tragedy, especially given that you don't need toxic events to happen in your life. Maybe lends itself to the idea that actually sometimes the bad stuff brings about more good stuff than you might have been expecting. All right. And final thing from me is I work with a lot of people who are becoming coaches through NLP for Kids and also through the franchise that we have at People Building. So if any of you are interested in becoming coaches, you should definitely go look at our franchise package. You don't just get your training, you get all of your ongoing business support there too. But the point being that a lot of the people that I am coaching in their business setup stages struggle to really define what they are offering. And I thought it was really interesting when I said to Eleanor, so if someone was Googling what you offer, what are they typing into Google? I thought her response to that was really interesting. And I would urge my coaches who are watching, who are starting out on the journey of avoiding the recession by setting up their own business, for you guys, make sure you have an answer to that question when I come to ask you it, because I'm going to expect you to have a very succinct response to what are people typing into Google who need to come looking for you. So this was an interesting one for me today, because I would 100% say that what Elena has to offer the world is valuable, it is powerful, it is useful. There are definitely people who would benefit from what she is offering and how she is offering it. And it was interesting for me too to realize all of the differences between how she works and how I how she works and how I work, and how differently I would approach some of the responses to the questions that I was asking her, and how differently I would frame difficult experiences that have happened in life. So I'm really curious to know what you guys thought. Make sure you sound off in the comments box if you are watching here on YouTube, or if you are listening on a good old-fashioned podcasting method, then please head on over to iTunes, where you can give us a 5-star review, as well as leaving your comments about the show there. Let me know what your favourite show of the year has been so far. For next month, we've got a corker, a really, really good one, a very interesting conversation with someone who was responsible for catching 2 of America's most wanted. You are not going to want to miss that one. But for now, if you have enjoyed this one, make sure you give it a thumbs up, click subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or as I say, give us the 5-star and subscribe on whatever podcasting platform you're currently listening on. And for now, thank you all so much for watching and listening, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye! The People Building podcast was produced and edited by Gemma Bailey. You can find out more information about our products and services on peoplebuilding.co.uk, where you can also join in the conversation around specific episodes. The information, opinions and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. It should not be considered professional advice. Unless specifically stated otherwise, we do not endorse, approve, recommend or certify any information, product, process, service or organisation that is presented within the podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced